Alien cases are featured in the media all the time, but few gain fame and are shared around the entire planet, right? The story I'm going to tell you today has affected the life of a woman named Giovanna Pota forever. In this video, we'll go straight to the point, to the abductions that made up the famous case of Giovanna Pota, the Italian woman who says she had experiences that most people would never even imagine. Recently, her story was published in Facebook groups with tales of an abduction that were not very different from others we have seen here on the channel. Giovanna would have been taken by extraterrestrials and gone through a series of experiences that would have marked not only the woman's skin, but also her life. That's because Giovanna no longer remembered much of what happened in the abductions. She had started mixing real life with fiction, and only physical evidence made the fear real. And when I say fear, I'm not exaggerating in any way. After all, the Italian woman's contact with aliens was not all roses. Species she came into contact with in the case told on Facebook was the Greys, extraterrestrials famous in pop culture for having gray skin, slender bodies, extremely large eyes, as well as large heads. Known for an unparalleled coldness, these creatures would be highly rational and not take anything to the emotional side. It was precisely because of these characteristics that Giovanna Pota suffered so much in all the visits she received. In the tale that appears to be the most recent, despite not having a confirmed date, things were no different. The woman had marks on her skin from what would have been probes inserted into her body. In addition, she showed a phosphorescent substance on her clothes that some ufologists say are leftovers of a decontamination. The most interesting part of the abduction report is the photos that Giovanna would have published on her social media. She says she found on her cell phone a series of images that would be of the Greys themselves. The creatures that appear through the darkness, and their appearance is not very friendly either, right? Finally, Giovanna Pota expresses in the message that she shared several times that she was very scared and couldn't take the visits anymore, mainly because her life had been very hectic and this was not a recent thing. Yes guys, the case of Giovanna Pota started much earlier than most people report when it comes to abduction. The legend goes that she lived most of her life in Sardinia, an island in the west of Italy. Since childhood, she had some strange moments with the Greys. The woman reported that she knew at first that she was doing strange tests, but she couldn't tell the aliens from the humans. Only when she was old enough to realize that they were beings from another planet did the nightmare come true. Giovanna received frequent visits, always performing the exams and returning to normal life with marks on her body like the ones you are seeing. But when she reached the fertile phase, things changed. Giovanna became the target of a lot of attention from the Greys, who seemed to want to inseminate hybrids in the Italian's womb. And indeed, it would have happened, guys. According to Giovanna herself, she would have been inseminated about 17 times by the Greyish race. At least that's what most sources say. That's because there is a certain divergence in this story, but hold your horses, we'll get to it. During all the inseminations carried out, Giovanna spent about 2 months pregnant until she received a new visit from the Greys for the birth. The idea, according to the woman, was mass reproduction, as the species could no longer generate new offspring on its own. This, however, was not explained very clearly. Again, the story diverges a bit, as other sources believe that creating hybrids would be just for experiments or even espionage. After all, as half humans, half aliens are more similar to Earthlings. Everything would be easier given the physical proximity, you know? Going back to the case of Giovanna Pota, she went through all these experiences, but for over 30 years, she kept it hidden. She never knew who to tell the horrors she lived and witnessed after all. She didn't even know if anyone would believe her. Things only changed in 2009 when the woman participated on an Italian TV program. The whole story of Giovanna took over. She appeared on Italian TV and told an extremely macabre story. In addition to everything I've already told you here, there was one insemination that ended up going wrong. so-called 18th pregnancy. Of course, it was another hybrid pregnancy, and it ended up taking a different path. Giovanna ended up not having this baby. The point is that no aliens came to get the hybrid's remains, and this became one of Giovanna's biggest proofs for the real existence of aliens. Again, at this point, the story ends, getting into some confusion there. Some sources say that this Italian son would be from the Greys, but others speculate that it would be from a different species. The second opinion says things would have occurred as follows. The rival of the Greyish aliens would have found the woman. Knowing that she was important to their enemies, they also decided to test her and inseminated a hybrid of their own species. These different extraterrestrials would be the reptilians, a race that, as the name implies, is closer to the large humanoid lizards. This last story even makes some sense, because the son who went wrong looks very similar to the lizards in some images. But these were not the only photos shown by Giovanna on the Italian program. She also presented images of alleged spaceships and also aliens. All this to add credibility to a story heavy with a lot of terror, right? That's because Giovanna only told the whole story because she thought that many women would have lived the same and were afraid to tell. Maybe Giovanna's life example was not the best so far, because she continued to live hell on earth. As was to be expected, even with an alien case making news around the world, Giovanna became a laughingstock in Sardinia. Every step she took was followed by laughter behind her back. She was forced to leave her job, and also her home to live in secret where people didn't know her. Only a handful of spectators and Giovanna's partner believed her, and life only took a better turn when the woman found ufology groups that listened to her story and embraced it without thinking that it was all a lie or madness. This is because many of these people would have seen or experienced very similar things. Today, Giovanna Pota must be around 50 years old and lives a life outside the spotlight of before. However, her story still circulates on the internet and gains new details with each passing day, which makes us question some things, right? What's true and what's a lie, guys? Well, this question is always floating around our minds lately, right? Especially with stories that seem to escape reality a little, and with the case of Giovanna Pota, things are not very different. A lot of people discredit the Italian woman's report, and in fact, some points don't seem to match. How many children had she actually birthed? How many races did she meet? How did she get the pictures when she was usually being kidnapped? Questions without many factual answers, and that are often answered by the creativity of people on the internet. About the veracity of what Giovanna Pota said on the show, many people questioned the truth of the facts. The photos seemed generic and with little trace of reality, and even the fact of the insemination and having those supposed proofs also left many people to wonder. Is this true, or was it not set up? There have been many things on the internet that have been set up, right? I'm not saying this is my opinion of the story or what I actually think, but I'm talking about what was shown through the two sides, divided between those who believe and those who don't believe. As I said, people who don't believe think about all of this, but those who believe say they've had experiences, say that they were even similar to what Giovanna lived through. But the fact is that without a scientific analysis with all the evidence, it is difficult for us to defend either side, right? Therefore, everything is up to each person's theory and belief. What about you? Do you believe it's real or not? Have you had any experience like this? Leave it here in the comments so I know, okay? See you in the next video, guys. Be well, and until next time, thanks.